even with all the problems on the Democratic side, given the natural Democratic
still a Democratic seat to lose.
I do believe that.
Okay, let's move on to Sestak. Yesterday, John Harris and we had Jim Vandehei talking about Robert Gibbs' tortured answer yesterday on Sestak. This doesn't seem, and I'm going to go to Chris in a second, this, as I've been saying time and time again, and it frustrates me, this shouldn't be hard to clean up. This seems like one of the easier political stories to clean up. The White House and Sestak can't clean it up.
I think that you underestimate the degree of difficulty, as they say in gymnastics.
With Sestak?
It's harder for the White House to clean up because they can't just swat it away with rhetoric. There is, in fact, a law. I mean, we may be surprised that the law has applicability in this case. We may think it's like an example of criminalizing politics. But there is, in fact, a law, and they need to make sure they're on the right side of that law. Whenever a White House press secretary enters into terrain where the White House counsel's office has to dictate the answer, it's really hard because they're going to limit what he says, and they're going to say, don't say this, you can say this, go no further than your talking point. And White House press secretaries end up looking ridiculous. Gibbs is not the first person. In his defense, he's not the first person with this problem up there.
You know, Chris Matthews, you and I both work the floor of Congress. And this seems like, and I guess the reason why I'm frustrated with it, Chris, is if you and I had this back and forth during the campaign, I would come up to you and I would say, yeah, Chris, you remember when I talked to you about that? And you go, yeah, you said this. Yeah, but we would figure out about 3 seconds how to clean it up. Is the problem in this Sestak case the fact that they're dealing with a cranky Navy admiral that ain't going to clean it up that easily? A guy that does not play by the rules of Washington.
I think you're right. I think Sestak's a tough customer to negotiate with. And you have to remember the conversations. You know, I just wonder about people, we all write books and try to remember quotations. Can you imagine trying to remember the exact words between Bill Clinton and Joe Sestak? I mean, does anybody really think, well, Joe, the word from the White House from Emanuel is if you decide not to run for the Senate, we will give you a spot on the Intelligence Oversight Commission. Oh, by the way, you're not eligible for it because you're a member of Congress. I mean, this is crazy. There's something in the fact here, and John may be ahead of this in the reporting, but there's some fact problem here, isn't there? They couldn't give him Secretary of the Navy because they gave it to Ray Mabus a few weeks before. They couldn't give him the commission because apparently the one commission thing you want to be on, intelligence, you're not eligible for if you do run for Congress again. So I don't know if the facts even figure out here. They don't seem to.
The facts, Chris, don't make sense. And
everyone seems like they're in a bad position when asked about it. Like they've been placed in an extremely awkward situation.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. But I think that whole deal with Specter was probably a bad deal. It didn't smell right. Specter is a 30-year Republican. All of a sudden, he's going to become a Democrat. I've compared him to the guy who puts a woman's on to get in the lifeboat. You know, it's not exactly the most manly thing anybody's ever done. Women and children first. Therefore, Arlen gets his seat. You know, I think there was a little bit of bad stuff about that to begin with. And why did they need that 60th vote so much that they're willing to bring Specter abroad and then have Bill Clinton have to deliver the message? Why didn't Rahm just call this guy with the offer? If it was clean. If it was clean, why didn't he make the call?
Right. And to close this up, though, in the end, you know Pennsylvania better than anybody. Do you suspect that Sestak is still, even with all this mess, still a favorite there? Because I actually think that independence helps him.
I think Sestak's going to win big because I think Sestak had 30 years in the Navy. The great thing about Pennsylvania is, as Bob Casey Sr. once said, it's a John Wayne state, not a Jane Fonda state. They'll only know one thing about Joe Sestak: 30 years in the United States Navy serving his country in uniform. That's it. That trumps just about everything else. Yeah. Club for growth, the whole works. People really respect that. And even when Arlen Specter went after him for being relieved of command and all that stuff, the guy who did the ad on the other side, Neil Oxman, said, hey, thanks for advertising his Navy record for us. That's what they did. It's a great irony. And by the way, I don't think Pennsylvania's as far right as Santorum or Toomey. I think it's a slightly, right or left. It's probably a little bit right of center this week, but somewhere in the middle usually.
All right, Chris, stay with us.
John, stay with us.
John, stay with us. Coming up next, Warren Buffett and his son Peter